Between this channel, Instagram, and my TikTok, you guys have been sending me loads of questions, and I've been feeling a little bit guilty about not being able to answer all of them just because there are so many of them. So I figured I would do a Q&A video and get through a whole bunch of them in one go. Let's get to it. What is up, guys? My name is Ben Hartwell. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you haven't already done so, please consider smashing that subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. So I've done one of these Q&A videos before, but it was quite a long time ago. I think that was even in the old studio, so well over maybe 18 months ago. So I figured it was probably time to get another one done, and these are probably going to become a more permanent kind of video that I end up making, just because you guys ask so many questions, and I really do appreciate you guys asking all these questions. So keep them coming. So instead of replying individually to all of those questions across all the platforms, I'm going to answer a load of them in one go here on YouTube, and hopefully they'll be a bit useful to some other people as well as those of you who asked the questions. So if you see your name on screen now, your question's getting answered in this video. Let's get straight into it. Franny P46 says, "Hi, thanks for this. Could you briefly explain how I will connect some modulation pedals to Boss Katana amp, which will be switched using Boss GAFC foot switch? Thanks." And that's from the What is the 4 cable method video. Thanks for the comment. So I found this diagram online about the signal flow within a Boss Katana amp, and it looks like the effects loop send and return come before all the internal effects within the Boss Katana, but after the preamp section. So you could set up a bunch of pedals in 4 cable method just like you would with any other amp. What you are going to have to be careful with though is where you end up putting some of the internal effects within the Boss Katana, especially drive pedals, because if in the effects loop you end up putting a lot of time-based stuff, like you said, modulations, delays, reverbs, that kind of thing, you are then going to be putting them before drive pedals that are internal in the Boss Katana. So you could get some undesirable or unwanted effects. For example, delay tails run into a distortion pedal might not be what you're after, but a regular 4 cable method should work for the majority of the things that you're trying to do there. It's just going to be a case of trial and error. Kano or Kano228, I apologise if I'm getting any of these names wrong, asks what strings are on there. That's from the Hotel California video and the Comfortably Numb video that I did for my Sunday solos. So for the Hotel California video, they were Primo 9.5s from Ernie Ball, a string that I've recently started trying out and is currently on all of my live guitars. To me, they kind of feel like 10s tuned to E flat. I really like those strings. On the Comfortably Numb video using the Silver Sky, they were the Dario XTs in 10 to 46. They're the coated ones. Again, another string that I really like. Historically, I've not really gotten on with coated strings, but because of the way that I play, and I do tend to sweat quite a lot on stage, these ones have been really good for me. They've lasted really well. The only downside to them is they are a bit on the pricey side. Now, if they made a 9.5 of those strings, I'd be all over that. Bob Sanders 5488 asks, are the Toneshaper pots good quality? And that's from my modding the Strat Part 2 video. Yeah, the Toneshaper kit, the whole kit was really good quality. The pots in it especially are really good because they're CTS pots. I think they were all 250 pots. One of them that I got wasn't the smoothest feeling pot, but sound-wise it was great, and the build quality was as you would expect from CTS. I can't really recommend the Toneshaper stuff enough, and for the price of those kits, I think they're an absolute steal. Now, I'm not even going to try and pronounce this name, but this person asks, hello, how do you use the Apollo plugins on Ableton? Yeah, I can show you that. Let's jump into the computer. Okay, so I'm in Ableton. It's just a blank set that loads up when you first load Ableton. I am in the trial version of Ableton. I don't have a full version of Ableton at the moment, but it should work the same regardless of which version you have. So once you've got UAD2 installed and you've got all your plugins authorized, you just come along here to plugins, come down to Universal Audio, and then all of the UAD plugins are listed here. So you just have to find one of the plugins that you have authorized. So I'll take this 1073, drag it onto one of the audio channels, and there it is, loaded straight up onto that audio channel. It can do all the EQing. Works just like in any other DAW. If you want to add plugins onto a bus or onto the master, it's the exact same process. Let's say I want to load a Fairchild onto the master, click and drag it over to the master, and it loads straight up ready to use. So then let's say you want to get back to one of those plugins. So I put that 1073 on channel 3, click on the audio, Click on the little spanner and it brings the plugin right back up. If you stack multiple plugins on one channel, they'll all appear here on the bottom. For example, I now have 2 plugins on that channel. I can use both of them at the same time. Open both back up with the spanner. Easy as that really. The whole thing works very similar in any DAW. And if you already know how to load other third-party plugins in Ableton, works in exactly the same way. Everything Guitar 6247 says, awesome playing and tone, thanks dude. They also ask, where do people get these backing tracks, or do you all make them yourselves? So for some of my videos, I do end up making the backing track completely from scratch. The most recent one of those I've done for was the Cardinal Black solo that I did, but a lot of the backing tracks are available from all different kinds of places on the internet. A good one that I use all the time is called Karaoke Version, and one of the things that I really like about that site is you can split the backing track into all its different parts and just download the parts that you need. Because one of the biggest things that I find with backing tracks is usually the drums aren't that great. So quite often I'll end up downloading everything other than the drums and then add my own drums, add other guitar parts, add whatever else is needed to the track and make it sound better than the backing track did to start with. A quick Google search will usually find you a pretty usable, decent track. You'll just have to check on what you can actually use that track for, which is why I quite often end up going with Karaoke Version. Blakey UK 1981 says, so can a JVM and Helix be used in 4-cable method as normal to get the benefit of the amp tone? Then connect the Helix to the power amp in out on the JVM. Is that how you use the JVM as a powered speaker? So yeah, I went over this in one of my previous videos. I put the link in the cards here on how you can use 4-cable method with a real amp but still use the preamp in the actual amp and switch to preamps within your modeling piece of gear. Not the easiest thing to try and wrap your head around really, but all it takes really is a bit of clever signal routing. And once you've got the routing sorted, you can do pretty much whatever you want. Switch in and out preamps within the modeling hardware, switch in and out the preamps of the actual amps, add effects before either of them or both of them, add effects into the effects loop. It can get a little bit complicated, but yeah, it's definitely doable. For the second point, if you just wanted to use the JVM as a big power amp and bypass all its front end, the easiest way to do it would be to take the out of the Helix and just go into the effects return of the JVM. That'll bypass all the front end of the JVM and just go into the power section. That will then still give you the master controls, the reverb controls, and I think the depth and presence controls, but nothing on the front end would work. So no gain, no EQ, and no volume. But then you could add your preamps in the Helix, any effects that you wanted to add, and it would all feed in to the power section of the JVM, just making the whole JVM act like one big power amp. Superhots1315 asks, dude, what is your whole setup there? Make, model of guitar, amp, pedals, por favor. And that's from the Comfortably Numb solo. Okay, so let's take them one at a time. So the guitar is the PRS Silver Sky SE, completely stock. That had the D'Addario XT 10-46 coed strings on it. That was going into the Helix, which was taking a direct line out into my interface, which was then going into Luna, and I was doing a bunch of processing in Luna. Let me jump onto the computer and we'll check out what I actually used. Okay, so I've loaded up Luna and this is the working file for the Comfortably Numb solo that I did. So out of the guitar, it went into the Helix. In the Helix, I was using the high watt amp model. In front of that amp, I had a valve driver and one of the fuzzes, I think it's called the Bighorn fuzz in the Helix. There was also some compression and a bit of EQ going on in the Helix. From the Helix, it takes the direct out into my X6 and into Luna. And in Luna, you can see I'm doing a whole bunch of processing on that guitar track. Starting with a bit of compression from an 1176. I've then got Helix Native, so that's the software within Helix running as a native version that you can buy as a plugin. And I'm doing some stereo widening with a very short delay and some other delay sounds. I've then got a Neve 1073 doing a bit of tone shaping, adding some top end, killing some of that mid, and cutting some of the really low stuff that I didn't need. I then got the little tube from Waves, just adding a little bit of harmonic distortion. Then I've got my first Pro Q doing a whole bunch of EQ moves. You can see some cuts, some boosts. Then a second Pro Q doing some more cuts and another little boost. Then some more compression with an LA2A. And then some reverb from the Lexicon. But also to get the kind of reverb that I was after for this part, I'm sending to a bunch of other reverbs as well. So I'm sending to the Abbey Road Chamber, I'm sending to another Lexicon 480 that also has some EQ moves on it, and I'm also sending to Waves CLA Epic. All of that is then getting bussed out to a guitar stereo track, which has got some more compression on it, another 1073, another Pro Q, doing even more EQ moves, then down to a main fader which is just using an SSL comp and ozone to do the final mixing. So there you can see there's quite a lot going on within Luna after I've got my signal coming from the Helix. Like I say, I try to get a bass tone that I'm kind of comfortable with in the Helix, and then I do a whole load of processing to get it as close to the record as I can after the fact in Luna. Ben Watson 4905 says, "Hey man, awesome solo, thanks dude. Is the Helix preset something you found online or made for yourself? It sounds spot on." And that's from the Purple Rain Sunday solo. Yeah, thanks man. All the solos that I do, or pretty much any guitar tone that you'll see on this channel, I've made myself. For all the Sunday solos, I try and get a tone that is as close to the record as I can, but I try not to go overboard with it. It's the kind of thing that you could get lost in and spend absolutely ages on dialing in the exact tones. So I'll try to get something that's kind of in the ballpark. Basically all I do is a little bit of research, find out what the actual amps, guitars, pedals, all that kind of thing was used during the recording of whatever the song might be, then dial in something within the Helix or within NAMM or a real amp or whatever it is that I might be using for that video that gets me into the ballpark. Then once the guitars are recorded and I've got a good take that I'm happy with, I'll do a whole bunch of post-processing, loads of EQ, compression, those kind of things to get the tone even closer to the tone that I'm actually going for that was on the original record. But yeah, to answer the question, yeah, I made that tone myself. Hans 8245 asks, "Hi, are two of these good for a TV setup, mainly watching movies and TV shows?" That's from my Kali Audio LP6 second wave video. So he's asking about these speakers right here, the Kali LP6 second wave, and the answer is definitely not. These speakers are not made for home media consumption. They are studio monitors, so they are going to give you a honest, flat representation of whatever you put into them, which is definitely not what you want when you're at home just listening to content. At home when you're relaxing and listening to things or watching movies, like you say, you want something that's going to be much more flattering to that kind of sound, and something that's going to be a bit more exciting to listen to than a speaker that's trying to give you a completely flat representation of the audio. There's loads of companies that make speakers for home use depending on budget. You could go with companies like Sony or Sonos, Bose. Depending on what kind of install it is that you want to do, you could go higher than that and go to something like B&W. I'd basically say try and get down to a good hi-fi store near where you live and try out a bunch of what they recommend for your setup. Try out the kind of thing that you're going to be listening to and see what it is that you like. But I would definitely say don't go for studio monitors in a home entertainment environment. You won't be happy with the sound that you end up getting from them. And the final question in this video is from MyFunMusic2905, says 6 sets, ? And that's from my 5 tips on cruise ships video. Yeah, on some cruise contracts you do end up doing a lot of work, and that can mean 6 sets. The highest amount of sets that I've ever heard somebody being asked to do was 9 sets on a cruise ship, but that was very extreme circumstances where a bunch of musicians had all got gastroenteritis, which means that you can find a cabin for 24 hours. So the only musicians that were on board that didn't have GI were being asked to cover all the other music duties. So they ended up having to do loads and loads of work. But it tends to be 4 to 5 sets on board a cruise ship, in my experience at least. But these kind of things should always be worked out with the companies and with the management before getting on board the ship. So it's written into your contract. I've turned down cruise contracts before because the contract has come through and the hours and the actual amount of performance time has not been specified. To me, that just leaves you open to being used and abused on ship. If it's not written down in a signed contract of what your actual working hours are, chances are they're going to make you do more than what you're getting paid for. So one of my big pieces of advice for professional working musicians is to always get a contract in place for any gig. My UK agent takes care of all my current contracts, so I don't have to worry about that side of it at all. He deals with all cancellations and changes and things like that. I don't have to worry about anything to do with that side of things. When I'm going on to cruise ships, I get sent contracts direct, and that's when I get to read through the entire thing and make sure that those hours are being specified in the contract, and I know exactly what's going to be expected of me once I get on board a ship. But getting back to the question, yeah, 6 sets can sometimes be a possibility on ship. It's not that normal that you will do that amount of work. It does usually tend to be in the 4 to 5 sets a day region, but then nothing's normal on a cruise ship, so it could well be expected of you if it's in your contract that might be a possibility. So there you go guys, I've tried to get through a bunch of these questions in one video and hopefully help some of you other guys that want to ask the same questions. I hope I've answered what you wanted to know. Please do keep asking your questions. I really like getting all these questions from you guys and hopefully helping you guys with your guitar journey. If you want to ask some more questions, you can leave them in the comment section below this video, or you can ask on my Instagram or TikTok. I'll hopefully find them and get around to answering them in a future video. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up. Like I said, hopefully this will become a more regular kind of video, the more questions I get asked. So that's it for this one. I hope you liked the video guys, and I'll see you in the next one.